Hi, so for those of you who don't know me, my name is Meg, and I am one of many event professionals in the industry who really love the industry and want to make it a better place. So long story short, a few weeks ago, I was invited to give a talk about accessibility. I'm a big believer in diversity, inclusivity, and accessibility. And, with virtual events, something is always going to go wrong. And even though we had done run throughs, even though I had felt ready, I had my PowerPoint, I had everything set to go, everything went wrong. And I kind of felt like I didn't give my presentation in a really good way, in the way that I intended to get my point across. I was nervous, sweating, it didn't come off really well. And, you can see people leaving your talk. So I was watching people leave and thinking that, what I have to say and what I wanted to share is also really important, especially when we're continuing with virtual events and returning to live. And a lot of people really wanted to hear this talk. So I figured, why not record it, put it on YouTube, and just hope for the best. And I wasn't going to do it anytime soon because I'm really busy. But today, I saw two things that really motivated me. One of them is a We the 15 video by the Paralympic Committee, and 15% of people in the entire world live with a disability, myself included, which I will talk about later. And it really touched me because I saw myself in those people. We cannot be inclusive until we treat everyone like one of us. We cannot treat people differently because they may look different or because of their disability. I'm hoping that this works, and if it does, then the link will be somewhere in this YouTube bio. And it was a really touching video. And another thing was an article that my friend had tweeted saying that disabled people want to return to live events. Yeah, we do. We're just like you. We miss social interaction. We're dying. We're dying here. And in some of the things I talk about today will help with the inclusion of disabled people with live events. And I'm doing research for my job that has to do with social sustainability, which I'm also very passionate about. And one stat that I found was really disappointing, which is in the UK, is a UK-based stat. In the United States, the stats are even worse. Only 53% of disabled people in all of the UK hold a job. 53%. In the US is even lower, and they have more people. And there's also stats that people have lower mental health well-being at their job. So that's really disappointing. And I know it's really hard for people to help us meet our accessible needs, but just opening those lines of communication, it doesn't really need to be that hard. So with that introduction in mind, we are going to get started on the presentation. I am hoping this works. We will see. So I'm going to be a cliche and say I am now sharing my screen. And here we are. So the talk that I was going to do is titled Hear Me, See Me, Include Me. And at the time, I thought that it was appropriate because I'm talking about my experience in the events industry, but I also wanted to mention that I hear you and I see you and I can't wait to include you. So that handle is my Twitter hashtag. Please, full Twitter handle, not hashtag. Please tag me in anything that you thought I might have missed in the presentation, anything you feel that I should know, because I don't know everything about disabilities or accessibility. I really can only be an expert in hard of hearing needs. I don't know much about deaf needs. I don't know much about seeing eye needs. I don't know much about other things. So if there's anything you feel that should be included or known, or anything you hate or you liked about this presentation, please give me a tag. So I was going to start with an introduction of who I am, and I figured if you don't know me and you're watching this, so you've made it 10 minutes in so far, this is not going to be long. I have worked in the events industry for the last 10 years, and I've also studied in the events industry. I'm a bit of a nerd. I'm really passionate about the industry, and I love learning, and I love teaching young people of all ages what I've learned. And I have studied and worked in America, Australia, and the UK, and I absolutely love it. My main focus is tourism and events, and it was not too long ago. I mean, I guess it was 2017, 2018. I realized that we needed to be more sustainable. And even before that, I was thinking about how can events help local destinations. So I kind of geek out in the area of events, social sustainability, environmental sustainability area. So if you ever wanted to chat to me about it, please do. I have tons of hobbies. I am obsessed with my cats. If you've ever met them, they're massive Maine Coons and the sweetest things ever. Coffee is life. I also love dogs. I love to read. I love film photography. All the pictures that you see in this presentation are mine from doing film. And I love trail running. I love being in the mountains. I love wild swimming. I love all of that. So you may be wondering, if you haven't heard me say earlier, I have a disability. 1 billion people in the entire world have a disability. That's a lot of people, and I am one of them. I have something called an invisible disability. You look at me, you may even hear me and think I have a funny accent. I must be foreign. I have a disability that is not immediately apparent, as is not visible from the outside. And people with invisible disabilities deal with misunderstandings, false perceptions, and judgment, all of which happen to me on a daily basis. And I mean daily basis. So before we go on, other invisible disabilities also include visual impairments, cystic fibrosis, autism, and so much more. It's not just about hearing and visual. You can't see them, but that doesn't mean that they're not there. And the pandemic has affected people like me and others like me. When the world shut down, we were all at home and events went virtual, which is absolutely amazing because people were still connecting through their computer. But what that meant was I had to rely on good Wi-Fi, which at the time I didn't have. I had such terrible Wi-Fi, and I had to rely on being able to see the person. Can I see their lips? Can I hear what they're saying? You know, hearing isn't something that just happens. It's something that I have to work on all the time. If you're not looking at me, I can't hear you. If you don't say, hey, Meg, I'm speaking to you, I may not even know you're talking to me. It's hard work. And, you know, when masks went on, just going out, shopping, everything was such a chore. You know, I had to tell people, I'm so sorry, I can't hear you. And most of the time, they were quite accommodating. But it's really hard for someone like me who's being strong, independent. I'm a strong, badass woman. I don't need anybody's help. I had to ask for help every single day. I had to remind people, even my friends and the people that I live with, every single day, I had to advocate for myself. You need to look at me when you talk. I'm sorry, I can't hear you. It's exhausting, it's lonely, it's isolating. Even 18 months later, I still feel lonely and isolated, even from the people that love me and the people that I live with. And this is one of the reasons why I'm taking a personal involvement in this. I'm by no matter an expert in this, and it's emotional labor to keep getting on stage and talking about it, but I need to open the door to these conversations so that people like me don't feel lonely and isolated. Because if I have to do this for a couple more years, I don't know if I can. And there's so many people who were exhausted. So that is why I'm here and talking about this. You may be thinking to yourself, oh, I don't know what to do. I don't know what we can do about it. The first thing is ask us. Ask us, how can we help you? One of my good friends, I was telling her that I was doing this talk, and she said, Meg, how can I help you? And I said, I mean, you're already doing it. When I'm in the car with her, she is completely aware that I can't hear her when I sit in the back seat. And I tell her, it's fine. I like to sit in the back seat because I can just look out the window. It's completely fine. But for other people, they might prefer to sit in the front seat all the time. So just have a conversation with us, and we can tell you how you can help us the best. And I'm going to talk through the 3 types of events that are going to be happening in the next couple of years. Virtual events, they're not going anywhere. Let's be real, I know we're all dying to get back to in-person only, but virtual is amazing for international connections and people who are time poor. So I'm going to start with talking about my personal experience with virtual. And the first thing is, there are 2 examples of what not to do. Literally the best examples of what not to do. Zoom and Clubhouse. They're the least accessible virtual platforms I've ever come across in my entire life. Zoom. I know you may be thinking, well, Zoom has subtitles now. Do you know why they have subtitles now? It's because deaf users sued them with a lawsuit for how unaccessible they are. So I'm not even recording this on Zoom among teams. That's how much I don't like them. So now they still haven't offered subtitles for normal people like me, but event platforms are able to use subtitles for Zoom. Clubhouse. That was a very personally difficult time for me when the Clubhouse app became really popular. So for many of you who may not know what Clubhouse is, it's an audio-only social media app, and it's invite-only. You can only get it on your iPhone, although I think it's on Android now. I'm not really sure. In January, when the second lockdown, third lockdown, one of them came out in the UK, everyone was on Clubhouse, which I understand is great because they were interacting with each other. They needed that human connection. But for many people like me with a hearing impairment, Clubhouse was not accessible. All of my friends who knew about my disability were posting on all social media, texting, messaging, everything. Join me in my Clubhouse room, join me. It was everywhere, nonstop. I got so depressed, I had to delete all of my social media. And what that meant was, during one of the hardest times in any of the lockdowns, I was pretty much cutting myself off from my network, from people who I thought were my friends. And it was so lonely and it was so isolating, but I had to do it for my own mental health because I was being excluded on purpose from an app that's not accessible to me at all and is not accessible to anyone at all. And a few months later, I saw, I guess, a Clubhouse influencer had posted on LinkedIn saying, I became so popular because of Clubhouse and XYZ. And I said, oh, good for you, but Clubhouse is actually not accessible at all. He replied that actually they're taking steps to make it more accessible and had conversations about how to make it more inclusive. Do you know who were not in those conversations? People who have needs. They were not involved in all of those conversations. And he said, you can just get a piece of equipment that turns audio to text. So it's my responsibility to buy a very expensive piece of equipment that I don't really need for anything else to only use to be able to have Clubhouse be accessible to me? I think not. So the most important thing is ask people, what are your needs? And Clubhouse seems like it's on its way out the door. So, if you're not jumping on the accessible wagon soon enough, you're not going to last very long. So anyway, long story short, those are the best examples of what not to do. And the best example of what to do is the TEDx London Women's event in 2021. You can actually still see their recordings on their YouTube channel. I had signed up because I saw it somewhere. I can't remember where I saw it. I was like, oh my gosh, this sounds very interesting. And as I was going through the registration, I completely skipped over the part where they ask if you have accessible needs, because I am so used to not seeing that at all. I was like, oh no, I forgot to put it in there, but I couldn't be bothered to try to find the email to let them know that I need captioning. Now imagine my amazement when I got on the platform and there was captioning and it works great. Not only was it extremely accessible, it was the most diverse event I ever went to. I may not have seen myself on that screen today, but I saw so many people like me who wanted to make a difference in the world, and the platform gave them a voice, and I just absolutely loved it so much. So I highly recommend watching their recording, and I also highly recommend attending their 2022 event. I've been looking for tickets every day since then. So you may be thinking, oh wow, that's really, really good information, but I don't know what can be done better. The most important thing is, how do we reach you to let you know what we need? So it needs to be in a place where we can easily see it. Don't make us hunt for your email. I'm just not going to go to your event. I'm too tired to hunt for emails. And by providing captioning, you're not only benefiting people who are hearing impaired, but you're also benefiting people who may be busy at home. They may have screaming kids in the background. They can't really hear what's happening on the screen. The subtitles helps them fill in those gaps. And also English as second language speakers love subtitles because it helps them make sure that what they hear is correct. So it benefits so many people. And another thing is, with subtitles, you can't just have them on automatic, because people with visible disabilities and also people with ADHD, those subtitles may be distracting and not beneficial to them at all. So you need to make sure that there's an easy on and off button. Now we covered virtual. Let's talk live. So the last live, like proper live event I went to, obviously, so very sad, was 2019. And in person, it was so easy to not need anything, because I'm seeing people face to face. I can rely on lip reading. If the area is really loud, I could try to snag a seat near the front. There have been a couple really big events where I for interpreters and they say no. So I ended up not going to those events, and I had the privilege to decide not to go and not say anything. But now that I'm older and wiser, I realize that's wrong. I need to say something for people like me, and I need to help pave the way for more accessible events. So this is really important to me. So, thoughts for the future. Have you asked what your attendees need? For example, right now, some in-person events, live events where we're there in person and not through a screen. There's so many slang and lingo for it. I don't even know what to say. Have you asked them what do they need? Because some events might require a face mask. I know that many don't, but I'm not going to go to an event where everyone's wearing a face mask, because I'm not going to hear them. It's going to be more stressful on me. Have you asked them if they have an interpreter they prefer to use? The most important thing that you're going to take away from this conversation is ask people what they need. Make sure you're asking them. And there's a few tips that you don't even need to ask us for. Carpeting. Carpeting helps with the echo in the room. If there's a room with no carpeting, it's going to be really echoey, and it makes it harder for people who are hearing impaired. Have seating allocations. I hear best when I'm closer to the stage. Now I know those are mostly VIP seats and the best seats in the house, but if we're in a large auditorium and I'm all the way in the back, I'm not going to really hear the speaker at all, because I also can't rely on lip reading and reading the facial cues to understand what is being said. So have accessible seating, not just for wheelchair users, but for people who benefit from being able to hear closer to the front. And you should also look at lighting and sounds. How good is it? Post-events can be really loud. You know, there's music, everyone's having a drink, they're chilling. Do you have a quiet space that we can network in? Like pull someone aside and say, hey, you know, I can't really hear you well. Do you mind if we pop into the quiet space? And now, have you asked your employees what they need? There have been many times where I did not tell my employer that I had a hearing impairment because I would not get hired. I have been discriminated against before, and it's been incredibly painful. I know some of you may be thinking, why don't you just sue them? It's exhausting. I'm too tired. I don't want to do it. I just let it go and move on with my life. Ask your employees, what do they need? Because some of them might be hiding something, not a bad something. I mean, a disability, something. And I want to tell you about my boss right now. She's absolutely phenomenal. I am so used to either not telling my employer or the employer making me do things that a normal person without any help does. So like making phone calls is really hard for me, but now I have a cochlear implant with Bluetooth, which really helps with phone calls. But before that, can you imagine making a phone call in a really loud room? That just brought me so much anxiety. Anyway, my boss, literally first day, even before my first day, she knew about my hearing impairment because I let her know in the interview process. So if she asked a question and I fumbled, it wasn't because I didn't know the answer and maybe just didn't hear the question. Anyway, she said, Meg, what can I do to make things like good for you? What are your accessible needs? And I was like, oh my God, no one has ever asked me that before in my 14 years of working. Not one single person has ever asked me, how can I make this easier for you? And that is awesome. Ask your employees what they need. Even if they may appear normal, they might have some needs that are not being discussed at work. Anyway, we are going to talk about hybrid. So I know it's really just a mismatch of virtual and in-person, but they do have a whole new set of challenges that you may not think of. I am going to tell you about my hybrid experience, and it was not a positive experience. So being an event professional, I know how to make a hybrid a good experience that works for me, somebody with a hearing disability. And I am currently doing a research year. I'm not going to disclose where to protect the privacy of the place, but I let people know. We wrote up a plan for my disability, and that was sent to all of my professors. And a few of the classes were in person, also hybrid, because some people could not make it to the campus for the school year because they were international and they couldn't get to the UK. And I informed my professor, all of the students get clear visors for free. Can you please let them know that they have to have it? By law, they have to have it to make the class more accessible. That did not happen. There was no advocating from the professor. Every week I asked, can you please ask them to get clear visors? Can you please tell them that this is available to help make the class more accessible? Some of them did go and get the clear visors, but only after I asked them to. Every week I was advocating for myself, and after every single class where I missed most of what was being discussed, I went home and I cried. Like heavy, ugly, sobbing tears, and that was incredibly difficult because I wanted so much to be a part of the conversation. I loved the stuff that we were discussing. I loved prepping for the class. I absolutely loved it. But after every class, I went home and I sobbed. I called my mom and I said, is this the rest of my life when we're in the pandemic? Is this something that I'm going to struggle with because I don't know if I can do this for the rest of my life? And I do not want anyone going through a hybrid experience to ever feel that way that I felt after that class. We are advocating for ourselves every single day. We need help. We need someone to come up and help us advocate. It's so hard on our emotional well-being. So how can it be improved? First thing is, listen to us. We know what we need, and we are telling you how to make it work. I needed everyone in the room to have a clear visor so that I could see their face and be able to read their lips and be a part of the conversation. Additionally, one thing I did say, but this will only really work in meeting rooms. Everyone has a laptop and on mute, and I have my laptop set up with captioning. Oh, everything is on mute. That is the most important thing. Any person who speaks unmutes their laptop and speaks. That way the captioning comes up, and the people who are remote can also hear them better. So when they're speaking, they're not speaking across the room to the microphone. And for large hybrid events, unfortunately, I still don't know how to make it more inclusive. But the most important thing is ask your attendees how is the best way to be inclusive, and put captioning on your platform. I cannot believe it's 18 months in and we still don't have captioning on most platforms. That should be one of the first things you do. So who benefits from inclusive efforts? Everyone. Everyone. Even with the carpeting, which is such a small thing. When I was in school, so many teachers and kids say that they felt like they heard better and it was much better for their learning environment. Everyone benefits from inclusive efforts. It's not just for people with disabilities. Everyone benefits. So you may be thinking to yourself, oh my gosh, you just spoke for like 30 minutes. I don't know what I can do next. Like, what do I do? Don't worry. We got you. I got you. The most important thing is when you are designing events or hiring people or anything to do with people with disabilities, and this also goes for race, sex, gender, everything. Don't check box. Invite us to your table because we have the lived experience and we can tell you what we need and how to best go forward. And another thing is you have to remember this is a learning journey. I am not asking for perfection at all. We are human and humans are going to make mistakes. We're going to ask really awkward questions and you're going to be like, oh my God, why did that just come out of my mouth? That is totally normal. And the only way you're going to learn is by asking those uncomfortable questions. I am here doing this talk because I want to open the line of communication. I want to make life and attending events so much easier for people like me. I want to build an inclusive events community, which ties into my love for sustainability and social sustainability. Anyway, it's a learning journey. Do not be afraid to make a mistake. We're here because we want to talk. The next thing is we know what works for best for us because we have the lived experience, we have the attended experience at these events, and we've seen what has gone wrong or what can be improved next. Some of us will need a little more support in one area, but we will excel in other areas. And what I mean by that is when I work for you, I need support on phone calls. Do not make me sit on 1 hour phone meeting. I'm going to hate that. It's going to be exhausting. I'm going to need a nap. Because remember earlier, I said hearing is hard work for me. I have to work at it. It's not something that just happens. I know we're tired of being on camera. I know it. I'm sorry. I know it. But what I need is a captioned meeting. Cameras off. You don't even need to be on the camera. I just need to see the subtitles to make sure what I heard is correct. And I excel in so many other areas. I'm uber organized. I am great at being a cheerleader. You need support? I got you. Anyway, what I am saying is my disability does not define how a job is done. I will need a little help getting the job done, but you bet I will excel at that job. And there are a lot of people like that don't get the support that they need, so they're not excelling at their jobs, but they can do an amazing job at their job if they get that support. And the last thing is, you have the opportunity to make a difference. People, everyone, and I mean everyone, wants to feel included. No one wants to feel lonely and isolated all of the time. I feel that all the time, even when I live at home. It's exhausting reminding people, if you're talking to me, you need to make sure I know you're talking to me. If you're having an event and you want me to come, don't do it without subtitles. You know that I need that. Don't invite me to Clubhouse because that is not inclusive and that's bad for my mental health. I already went through a whole depressive episode with that. It's not happening again. Anyway, what I'm saying is you have the opportunity to make a difference by deciding to make a change. So now, this is a nice little chart that I made. I hope you can see the bottom of it. Just kind of a reminder of what you need to do during the events journey. So first thing you need to do is listen and have conversations. Look at who's sitting at your table and invite the missing spaces. That goes for people invisible disabilities, visible disabilities, gender, race, everyone. Everyone needs to be sitting at your table, and I will let you know there will be very interesting, very good conversations. At the registration process, you need to make sure that I can see you are asking for my needs, and there's an email for any potential questions that I might have. Most of the time, people just bury it somewhere in the registration. That's easy to miss. The next thing is you need to have pre-event training. Does your staff know how to communicate with people with disabilities? That's incredibly important because there have been times where people just didn't know what to do with me, and that's not a good feeling. Like, I want to come to your event and feel inclusive. I don't want to be reminded that I have a disability. I don't know if that makes sense. I just want to come and enjoy your events. You need to hire appropriately. And what that means is you need to hire people who are open to learning. Do the people that you're hiring have the training? Are they open-minded? The next thing is have a supplier and team talk. You need to communicate to them that there's potential that people who are blind, deaf, etc. are coming to your events, and to be on the lookout for them. There's nothing worse than showing up to an event and they just completely don't know, and you have to keep having the same conversations over and over again. Hi, I'm so sorry, I can't hear very well. Do you mind XYZ? That's exhausting. So the most important thing is, one of them anyway, is having conversations with your supplier and your team to let them know and how they should respond. Now, during the events, I feel like I covered that quite a bit over the presentation, so we'll skip that. In the post-event feedback, I don't know if you're like me, I hate feedback. I get really awkward and uncomfortable with it. But in the case of making sure that you're doing better for the next time, you need to have post-event feedback so that people can let you know, this is what I needed, or you absolutely smashed this and got this out of the park, please do this again. And the last, and one of the most important things to know and remember, is that this is a continued learning journey. I don't know everything. I don't claim to know everything. I am still learning about race. I'm still learning about gender. I'm learning about seeing eye. I'm learning about mental limitations. I am still learning so much, and it's a continued journey. Just because I read one thing or did a training doesn't mean I know everything now. I need to make sure that I'm continuing to learn, to make sure that everything I do, everything I say, and every decision I make, I try to make it with an inclusive lens. Inclusivity and belonging is so important because we just had the hardest 18 months of our life, I hope, ever. And it's hard for people to open up is emotional labor. I'm gonna have to go home and drink after I make this, but it's emotional labor to keep talking about it, and it's emotional labor to keep begging for accessible needs or to feel included. And it's so important that we as human beings don't ever intentionally make people feel not included. And when you have an inclusive event or team or whatever, it is absolutely phenomenal. Case in point, the TEDx London Women's events. So I came across this quote a couple of days ago, well, a couple of weeks ago now, but it's by People Activation. I absolutely loved it and I thought it was really relevant. Don't communicate. A change requires action. You need to create powerful emotional connections that inspire, involve, and drive action. And that made me think of where we are right now. We've been having conversations in the last 18 months about equality, about diversity and inclusion and sustainability. We've been doing nothing but talk. Now is the time for action. I don't want to, I mean, I love talking. I will continue to talk, but I do want to see action, and I am hopeful that the next year we will see more action than talking. Thank you for your time, and if you made it through the last 40-ish minutes, all the way to the end of the video, thank you. I really appreciate it. And this is my contact info if you wanted to talk about anything at all, or if you feel that I missed something that I should have said. If you hated something, try to be nice about it. I'm a very fragile human, and thank you for your time.